Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. We all know, especially if you're in healthcare or education, things can get pretty demanding. You're always trying to make time for, well, everything.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like a
right.
constant balancing act. But today we're looking at something that might just offer a different way to navigate that whole work-life challenge. Agency work.
Exactly. And, at first glance, you might just think, oh, agency work, that's just for filling those temporary gaps. But what we're really diving into today
hmm
is why more and more people in healthcare and education are actually choosing this path. They're seeing some real benefits, especially when it comes to, like, taking control of their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been digging into some information that really unpacks why this approach is becoming so popular and, what it really means for people in these fields. And at its core, it seems to be about, having a real say in your work life, having control.
Absolutely.
That idea of shaping when and how you work is pretty compelling.
Yeah,
So let's start with something that seems like a huge factor, schedule control.
for sure. Schedule control comes up all the time as a big motivator for people choosing agency work. It's not just about picking up a shift here and there. It's about really designing work patterns, like making your work schedule work for you.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. The stuff we've been looking at really emphasizes this designing your work life
Yeah.
thing. And it's about a level of customization that you just don't often get with traditional jobs. Think about it, parents being able to plan their work around their kids' school schedules,
Right.
or caregivers adjusting their hours because family needs change, or even people who are going back to school and need to balance work with their studies. It just makes things so much easier.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is how specific you can get with that control.
Yeah.
It's not just about big life events. It's like some people work best at certain times of day, right?
Absolutely.
Agency work lets you focus your work when you're at your peak.
Mhm.
Then you can have downtime when you're, not as productive. Or, like you mentioned, some people might prefer to work more during certain seasons. Right. Right.
And then take time off during others. So it's really tailored to how you work best.
Yeah, that just makes so much sense. I can imagine how much less stress you'd have, being able to fit work around your life instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that keeps coming up is professional variety.
Oh, for sure.
And it's more than just a change of scenery, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a real opportunity to actually grow in your career.
Absolutely. With agency work, you often get to work in all kinds of different settings.
Right.
Different facilities, different technologies, different types of patients or students. And that experience can really help you develop professionally much faster than staying in one place.
One thing that really struck me was someone said they learned more in 1 year of agency work than in several years at a single institution.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, that really says something.
Yeah.
Facing different challenges and approaches, it just sharpens your skills.
Totally. And in the big picture, you become a more well-rounded professional.
Right. You learn new protocols, see new technologies, work with different teams. You just have a broader perspective, and that makes you a better problem solver. Plus, you can try out different specialties within your field
Oh, that's a good point.
without, committing to one specific role. So you figure out what you really like.
Right, you get to test the waters.
Exactly.
And I bet that exposure to different organizational cultures is helpful too. Seeing how different places work, different leadership styles, all of that. That's got to give you some great insights for your career.
For sure. And on top of that, think about all the connections you make.
Yeah, your network just expands with every assignment.
Exactly. You meet new colleagues, potential mentors, collaborators, and those relationships can lead to opportunities you wouldn't have even imagined.
Absolutely. So we've covered the flexibility, the professional growth, but let's talk about something that's so important for everyone: work-life balance. We all know healthcare and education can be super demanding, and burnout is a real issue. So how does agency work address that?
Well, that's where the schedule control we talked about really comes in. It gives you concrete ways to prevent burnout.
Yeah.
You can actually set your own schedule, take breaks when you need them, control your workload. It's a more sustainable way to work, for sure. You're not constantly sacrificing your personal life for your job.
So you actually have the power to say, hey, I need a break, and actually take one
Right.
without all the restrictions of a traditional job. And being able to build in those recovery periods between tough assignments, that's got to be huge for your well-being and just for enjoying your work more in the long run.
Totally. And this brings us to another point that often surprises people, the financial side of things.
Okay, yeah, let's talk money.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like agency work often pays better, doesn't it?
It can. Hourly rates are often higher than comparable permanent positions.
Right.
It's like you're getting rewarded for being flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, it makes sense. You're not just bringing your skills, you're bringing your willingness to work in different environments and on different schedules.
Exactly. And you can actually use your schedule to earn even more.
Oh, interesting.
Agency professionals often get higher pay for working holidays, weekends, those high demand times. So you can choose assignments that maximize your income while still having control over your overall availability.
That's smart. And there's also the potential tax benefits, especially if you're working as an independent contractor.
Right.
You might be able to deduct things like travel, continuing education, home office expenses. Of course, you always want to talk to a tax professional, but it's definitely something to consider. And then there's the whole multiple income streams thing. You could be working with several agencies.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can make things a lot more stable financially.
Definitely. But it's important to look at the whole picture.
Right, yeah.
Higher pay is great, but you also need to consider things like how consistent the work is.
Right.
And whether you need to handle your own benefits, depending on how you're set up with the agency. But for a lot of people, that trade-off is worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's say someone's listening and thinking, agency work might be a good fit for me. What should they be looking for when they're checking out different agencies? Because I'm guessing they're not all created equal.
You're absolutely right. Finding the right agency is key to having a good experience.
Yeah.
So first, look at the types of assignments they have. Do they align with your interests and goals?
Right.
Do they offer specialized roles or more general ones? Depends what you're looking for.
Okay, that makes sense. You want to make sure they actually have the kind of work you want to do.
Exactly. And speaking of what you want, don't forget about the scheduling.
Yeah, right. That flexibility. What specific questions should people ask about that?
Ask about minimum hours, how much they expect you to be available, how long assignments usually last, what their cancellation policies are. You need to know all that to make sure their flexibility actually works for you.
Okay, that's good advice.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the work itself, right? What about the support you get as a professional?
That's super important. Find out what kind of support the agency offers. Do they have resources for clinical development, professional development? How do they handle things like credentialing and payroll? And what happens if you have a problem during an assignment? A good agency will have your back.
That makes sense. And of course, there's more to compensation than just the hourly rate.
Right.
What else should people ask about?
Ask about different pay rates for different shifts, like evenings, weekends, holidays. Find out about their overtime policy. And if benefits are important to you, ask about health insurance, retirement plans, all that. And definitely see if they offer any help with professional development, like tuition reimbursement or training. You need to understand the whole package before you make a decision.
Okay, so that's like really practical advice. It sounds like choosing an agency is almost as important as deciding if agency work is right for you in the first place.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You want to find an agency that not only has the right opportunities, but also understands what you need as a professional and as a person.
That's a great point. So just to kind of wrap up our deep dive today, the reason agency work is becoming so popular in healthcare and education really seems to come down to a few things. You get incredible flexibility to design your work life. You get a variety of experiences that can really boost your career.
Yeah.
And you have a much better chance of achieving that work-life balance we all crave.
I think that's a great summary. For a lot of people, agency work is a completely different way of thinking about their careers. It's about aligning their work with their life.
And it might not be for everyone, of course, but it's definitely something to consider if you're looking for more control, variety, and balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, doesn't it? How would having more control over your work life impact your well-being, your sense of fulfillment?
That's a great question for everyone to think about.
Yeah. As you're navigating your career path, think about whether the things we've talked about today resonates with you.
Yeah.
Do they align with what you need and want right now?
Yeah, great advice. And with that, we'll wrap things up for today. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.